All right, number four, how come the vaccine was approved in a small window of time? So this is another extremely common question because people are worried, when's the last time a vaccine has been discovered and researched was years ago. And that technology took a really long time because our computers weren't as fast and there wasn't as much um, spreading of data and things like that. So the reason why these COVID-19 vaccines ended up being delivered really, really fast has to do with three of the main barriers that happen with any vaccine or medication research. So the first one is a lack of participants. So what happens in normal trials, it's really hard to get participants to take something that's extremely experimental. And in this case, with the Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J vaccines, we had a lot of participants who were scared of COVID or were really concerned about COVID and decided to get into these trials. So we had, about 40,000 people in the Pfizer, about I think 30,000 people in the Moderna, and I think 30,000 people in the J&J, something like that. But we had all of these volunteers sign up for the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials. And that is one of the barriers that was overcome quickly. Another barrier that sped everything up was the funding. So all of the countries that were able to fund these vaccine trials paid ahead of time, if you will, and that made it so that the researchers would not be worried about funding as far as making sure that the staffing and the data collection and all of that was smooth. And that's not done in every trial. So having the funding ahead of time and making sure that, hey, if this works, cool. If it doesn't work, it's okay. We just want to get your research out there. That barrier was overcome through a lot of funding and manufacturing. So manufacturing is something that takes the longest time because after you do the trials, you want to make sure it's all safe and the FDA does the approval process for that. And in this case, they started doing the manufacturing even before the trials were done. And that was overseen by the FDA. And what they told the companies was that, hey, we'll wait for your trial data to happen. But in the meantime, let's make all these vaccines so that way, the second we see that the data is good, we'll send out these vaccines extremely fast. So there's no delay. So those were the three main reasons why the vaccines were approved in a small window. Some other things is that if you think about any group project you've ever done, the more the merrier, and the more people working on the problem, you can solve it faster, right? So all of these studies were done around the world. For the Pfizer specifically, 153 sites in over many countries, including US, Argentina, Germany, and others in Europe, I believe. And so having this team of people working on this vaccine and sharing data in real time, kind of like a Zoom call or a chat or a Google Doc, essentially, around the world, really sped up the research and getting all of this data in. And then one thing I also wanted to mention, and now it's escaping my mind. Oh yes, so with the mRNA vaccines, another reason why they were so fast to develop is because a lot of the hard work and research has been done for many years. So a little history lesson with mRNA vaccines, they were actually discovered in the 1980s. So that's about 40 years worth of research for mRNA vaccines alone. You also had research about mRNA in general since the 1960s and the lipid nanoparticles since the 1970s. So really, we've been studying this mRNA technology for almost like 60 years in most cases. So really, the hard work about discovering this technology was done already. It's just we finally had an opportunity to use this technology on something that could help people. And that's really other things that sped up the process. Just to summarize it, we were a lot more efficient, there was a lot more funding, and everybody was communicating. It was essentially basically what it was. And that really made the whole process much faster.